Hey horror movie fans, I'm Dr. Will Carver, OMG MD, coroner out of Bloomington, Indiana, and this is Dr. Carver's Auteur Autopsy. I'll be presenting a flick hopefully on the weekly, much like the horror host used to do, which lives on today on some networks on the electric TV gadget, and finds a new medium on the tubes with the various internet machines. If you like movies of the horror persuasion, click, watch, and subscribe. What's up horror movie fans, I'm Dr. Will Carver, OMG MD. This is Auteur Autopsy, and today we're going to be talking about Return of the Living Dead. Return of the Living Dead, another god-tier movie from my youth, features two medical supply warehouse employees who unintentionally release a toxic gas into the atmosphere that brings the dead back to life and eventually turns them into zombies. These two, the owner of the warehouse, the mortician from across the way, one of my people, and the punks chilling in the nearby graveyard all must deal with the living dead who fight the pain of death by eating human brains. I love horror comedy. It is easily my favorite genre when done right. Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2, and Night of the Creeps were all up there for me as a young doctor in training, but this was my first and what made me fall in love with the genre. The film was conceived after the late great George A. Romero and John Russo parted ways following the 1968 classic, the film which started it all, Night of the Living Dead. A decade later, Russo wrote a novel called Return of the Living Dead, after the pair agreed that Romero would retain the first part of the title that he could build sequels around, while Russo would keep the rights to any titles featuring, quote, Living Dead. This is weird, but worked out for everyone in the end. Also adding to the weirdness, Tobe Hooper of Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame was supposed to direct, but he backed out to make this space vampire movie called Life Force, a movie that was also god tier. The screenwriter for Return of the Living Dead, who also coincidentally wrote Life Force, was then promoted to director. He then veered significantly from the previous film, making it way more comical with lots of dark humor and punk rockers, which was all for the better. Now for the goods. The movie is hilarious, and there are some really touching moments. People show common sense, and there are a couple of good scares. Clu Gulager is in it, and does a good job of hamming it up. He really makes every scene that he's in. He also gives us one of the most memorable lines of the movie, Rabid Weasels. Other than perhaps Repo Man, it's the punkest movie of all time with a killer soundtrack. The scene after they burn the corpse and the gas gets into the cemetery is just perfect. The film also gave us zombies eating brains. Now for the bads. This movie is truly flawless. The movie opens with a disclaimer saying that the events and names in the movie are real and that this really happened, which is ridiculous. The first scene is at a medical supply company in Louisville, Kentucky. Here we meet three of the main characters, the warehouse owner Bert, played by Gulager, and his two employees, Frank and Freddie. It's Freddie's first day on the job. Bert leaves, ready for the 4th of July weekend, leaving the other two there to explore. Freddie is impressed by all the weirdness they have there. Split dogs, skeletons, cadavers, so forth, and wants to know the strangest thing they have. Well, Frank does not disappoint, and asks Freddie if he's ever seen Night of the Living Dead. He has, of course. Here Frank lets him in on the industry secret that it was actually real, and that they have a military drum from the failed experiment that was sent to them by mistake. This is one of those little things that I love, that they tie it into the original zombie mythos and expand on it, and also use the Z word instead of acting like they have no idea what's going on when it hits the fan. Anyway, they do what people in movies do when they hear some cool but dangerous item is in the basement waiting to be explored. They check it out. Freddie is like, shouldn't we be careful? But Frank tells him, nah, it'll be fine. This was made by the Army Corps of Engineers. And he taps it and it immediately leaks yellow gas, knocking them unconscious and bringing all the dead things to life. This first scene is so great it gives me chills. Ditto on the music. And the second time they play it, when they burn the cadaver and the smoke rolls over the graveyard, it's even better. On a side note, Freddie I thought for sure was the guy from American Ninja, but he is not. They look so much like the same person, it's insane. Anyway, they wake up and Frank basically screams like a wild man for the rest of the time he is, quote, alive, i.e. the time where he is technically undead but not full-on brain eating. There we see the split dogs are reanimated, as are the butterflies pinned to the wall and the cadaver in the freezer. The cadaver is not pleased. Instead of calling the military number on the side of the barrel, we see the guy manning that line, and he's a real peach. They call up the warehouse owner, Bert. Bert gets there and is like, "What the hell, you ruined my business," and decides they have to deal with it themselves. Kill the cadaver like they do in the movie, by piercing its brain. So Frank grabs a pickaxe, Freddy unlocks the walk-in, and Bert hangs back giving direction. As soon as the lock comes off, the yellow zombie bursts through the door and beelines it right at Bert. They pull him off, Frank is screaming and Bert is yelling at him to be a man. He then hits the yellow bastard in the head with the pickaxe, which does nothing. They're freaking out. End up sawing his head off. The body is then up and running around. It's insane and pretty hilarious. While all that is going on, Freddy's punk friends show up and break into the locked graveyard next door. They're basically just there to break stuff and party. The group, consisting of Casey, Chuck, Scuzz, Spider, Suicide, and Trash, along with Freddy's girlfriend Tina, wait to take him home. A very unpunked thing to do, getting a job. While they wait out, Trash, the short orange-haired one played by Linnea Quigley, asks Spider if he ever fantasizes about dying in the worst way possible. He's like, no, of course not. And she talks about getting ripped apart by old men, which later happens, and tears off all of her clothes. The nudity is extremely gratuitous here in a way that only happens in the 1980s. The punks are like, hey everybody, she's doing it again! And she's naked for the rest of the movie. Something weird you may notice is her lack of genitalia. It is very distracting. They weren't allowed to show pubic hair as that was a no-no with the ratings board at the time. So they decided to shave it, which ended up looking way worse. In the end, they used a prosthetic, giving her a Barbie-esque appearance, which is super creepy. Back to the trio at the warehouse. After subduing the thing and chopping it up, it is still wiggling about, so they decide to take the thing in pieces to the mortuary across the way and have Ernie, the mortician, cremate it, telling him they are rabid weasels. He's like, no. Rabbit or not, I'm not burning living animals. Now they have to show him. They pull out an arm and it grabs Ernie by the leg. He's sure on board now and they burn the severed parts. That's when the contaminated gas spews out of the mortuary and acid rain starts bringing it back to Earth, covering the dead, reanimating them in the process. And that's when the movie really starts. You get the main characters turning into zombies, it's brutal, the mythos of the zombies eating brains delivered by the second most famous zombie ever, the iconic Send More Paramedics scene, some amazing deaths, fantastic zombie fight scenes, and the most famous zombie of all time in Tarman. The zombie just looks awesome, and his kills live up to his look, like when he bites into Suicide's head like a fleshy apple. If you haven't seen it, you must immediately buy and watch it. I can't recommend it enough. Just watch the movie. It's amazing. So that was The Return of the Living Dead. Comment below to let me know what you think of this glorious 80s flick. Tune in next week when we talk about a more recent flick with 2015's Freaks of Nature, the horror debut of one Robbie Pickering. Please take a second to subscribe. This is Dr. Carver signing off, and if I see you, it's not a good thing.